7:52 p.m. and 7:40. Excuse me. And thank you.
You're welcome.
And we are being filmed. So why don't we start right in with a welcome all. And if there's any public comment, this would be the time for it. There being no comment, we will quickly review the agenda because we are going to change some of the items around quickly. We have had the benefit of our auditors here tonight, as well as our internal business manager. Okay, thanks. This is Cynthia Marie, one of our guests from Central Source, David Kelleher and Charlie Webb from AAF, which, as was noted earlier, probably handles more charter schools than any accounting firm in Massachusetts. So they will be discussing the audit tonight. And in the sake of moving them along, because I just made a presentation before the Finance Committee, we'll ask them to make their presentation as soon as I finish reviewing the agenda, basically. So that item, which is number 7, the Finance Committee updates for the audit review, the motion to review the audit, will be actually the second item on the agenda, the third item rather. After that, we'll go ahead and review the minutes, and then we'll have the state of the school report. We'll discuss the DESE open conditions. We'll have a review of evaluation tools for the Board of Directors and the Executive Director. And then we'll have the finish up of the Finance Committee and the 501c3, discuss any other possible agenda items for the next meeting, and then we'll adjourn. So that being the case, why don't we start off with Cindy Marie, who will discuss the audit of the auditors and give us the presentation.
Okay. Every year, charter schools have to have an independent audit, and Alexander Aronson and Finning is the auditors for Gloucester Community Arts, and they do work with a lot of charter schools, so they are very helpful in our internal controls and operations. The audit went very well, and I'll turn it over to the auditors to review.
Sure. Just thank you to Cindy for having everything together for us as well and made everything a good audit process. So in the audited financial statements, I do just want to point out a couple of highlights. And again, we did have a very detailed meeting with the Finance Committee in advance of this. But just the independent auditor's report for the financial statements does reflect an unqualified audit opinion. So that's really what the Department of Ed would be looking for. This audit is due to get submitted next Monday, as it may be. So on the October 31st deadline. So again, just really brief highlights to go over for the year. What I do want to maybe just take a second and point out is just a couple key footnotes on page 10 before we go through the highlights of the financials. We did mention that unqualified audit opinion, but also just want to highlight in footnote 9 to the audited financials, just the continuing operations that in the school startup phase, there have been cumulative deficits of about $157,000, about $132,000 of which were in fiscal year 2011 due to some of the issues with the ramp up in the enrollment of the students over that time. So just again, been getting through that with just the managing your cash flow, your vendor relationships, but just we do focus here, just the continuing operations, just anticipating more stable enrollment for fiscal 2012 as continuing to work with your vendors also. And also just right above that in footnote 8, and just another key item, just that the school has been named as a defendant in a lawsuit with the Mass Board of Elementary and Secondary Education as well as DESE. So that's disclosed in these footnotes as well to the audited financial statements. So for the footnotes, I don't want to bore everybody with all the remaining details, but maybe just go through a couple highlights on page 5. Just the comparative financials do have a 2-year shown here, a far right column inception of 2009, February 2009 through June 2010, and then also next to that the fiscal year 2011 results as well. So total operating revenue for the school again was $1,559,279. That was on, I'd say, an average enrollment of about 77 students over the course of the year again. think started in the 60s, ended at about 89, but overall tuition was about 77 students for the year. So again, mix of the revenue, really had a startup grant of $173,000 and in-kind legal services primarily of comprised of $434,273. Total operating expenses offsetting those revenues, $1,692,559. Again, the main components there, your in-kind legal, we discussed the rent, which again is a straight line rent calculation of $363,000. Actual cash payments for the year were about $156,000 less than that. Then also personnel and related of about $450,000, including payroll tax and fringe benefits and salaries. So again, overall, the operating revenues less the operating expenses left a total loss for the year for the school of $132,060. Starting the year with net assets of $25,486, left the school at the end of the year with a deficit, cumulative deficit, $157,546. So again, the other way to look at that negative net asset, if you will, is just to look at your assets as compared to your liabilities. Again, your total assets for the school on page 4 listed at $321,547. Again, really just cash as of the end of the year. Offsetting that, just mainly vendor liabilities and accrued expenses, totaling about $293,000. Just a remaining piece of the startup grant of $30,000 and deferred rent, split equally long-term and short-term, totaling $156,000. So that total assets less the total liabilities gets you that negative $157,000 of unrestricted net asset deficit. And what we did go into detail with the Finance Committee group, just really a comparative sheet that we did look at about 6 other charter schools. Again, for the full board meeting, the highlights of the financials really were just what we wanted to go through there. The comparison to other charter schools, it's again a little bit difficult with Gloucester situation having you in a startup year. That really all the other schools that we have worked with are really more mature schools. So we presented this more as a basis to look at for future years, comparison goals to look for. Maybe just touch upon a couple of those goals quickly, just in more expanded sheet of paper. And again, just as a current ratio, looking at your ability to pay off current debts, Gloucester had about 80 cents of current assets for every dollar of current liabilities. Generally looking here, again, for more of at least a 2-to-1 ratio, ability to pay off the current debts, and you can see a range in the measurements here from about a 2.2-to-1 ratio to about a 12-to-1 ratio for more mature schools. So, again, slightly tough basis of comparison. Again, just a couple other boxes to look at, focus on maybe 2 or 3 more of these, but number 5, again, just looks at your mix of operating revenue. So again, your per pupil tuition this year, in a startup year, made up about 84% of total revenue, with really the startup grant from Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed making up the remaining 15%. And again, wider mix from the other schools, per pupil tuition, as low as 73% of the total and as high as about 92%. One other school with really ranges in between. Again, just in number 7, I just want to point out the different mixes of tuition per student. Again, I think we had a detailed talk at the Finance Committee level, just how different this can be driven by sending district, if you will. The Gloucester's tuition per student was $12,343 based on that 77 students. And you can just see a range there from about $9,400 for a low to about $12,400 as a high. And again, this is just a smaller sample due to some sending districts can be as high as over $20,000 per pupil tuition. Again, just really other ratios here you can use to monitor costs per full-time equivalent and your occupancy cost per square foot being a couple of the other major ones we discussed. Longer term ratio just in number 8, again, just, and you can see really more with some of the more mature schools, you see ranges in really the bottom operating calculation. The measure of an organization's stability is looking at your months in operating reserves. So again, with negative cumulative net assets, we have just a negative number here for Gloucester Charter. And again, you can see the mix of the other schools. Lowest one is just about 1.1 months of operating reserves at year end. And again, more mature school, about 12 years in existence, has about 18 months of operations. Usually about a 3 to 6 month range here is good to see for stability, cash flow, really just getting up to some stable operations. So I think that's a high-level summary of some of the key items in the audited financials. I might have Charlie Webb go through some of the key items in the management.
So the management letter, just to preface it, there was no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses that would be required to be reported in here. The only item that's required to be reported is the instance of non-compliance with the MTRS, and so everything else in here is general business comments. There's a number of items addressed from the prior year, adopting the accrual basis of accounting, using monthly closing checklists, timely bank reconciliations, and hiring of central source in further segregating your duties and improving internal controls. There are a few housekeeping items from the prior year, approving board minutes at the subsequent meeting, considering getting a line of credit for the school for cash flow purposes, and then discontinuing the use of debit cards. Some other policies and procedures to implement, adopting a formal whistleblower policy for a venue for employees to go, and then a formal fraud risk assessment and kind of general business risk assessment for the school. Looking at that at the management level and at the board level, kind of where your risks are when visiting that on a periodic basis. The two other comments we had, one, just formalizing the system for backing up data. All of your electronic data is on personal computers, so maybe there's an opportunity there to implement a network and formalize the system for backing up records and things like that. And then again, kind of looking at your general ledger maintenance and your year-end closing process, that there were a lot of entries at the end of the year to kind of get the books and records in shape for audit, so maybe formalizing that process as well. Overall, those were the main other comments we had.
And again, I think just for the board as well, just that we didn't have any audit adjustments as part of our process. As Charlie mentioned, I think a significant amount of that was really handled by Cindy and Barbara, and so it made our audit process a smooth process.
Any comments or questions?
One quick question on the backup. I'm curious, as you go to so many different institutions, as schools, businesses all move to the cloud increasingly, are most sticking with an on-site backup system for security, and what's the movement there? What are people tending to do in terms of their business operation? I mean, before it was like everyone had separate servers, particularly in schools. You had one server for students, one for business and admin, and very much sort of segregated in-house, a lot of backup in-house. I'm just curious what's happening out there with that.
I think we've seen really a mix. I mean, as you said, the cloud's evolving, so I don't think everybody's gone automatically to that. I think for the accounting systems, for example, I think QuickBooks Online is used here, so in some cases for the accounting records, the off-site backup can be that Cindy has access to it and it's off-site. As you said, with the servers, we've seen some backups with, I call it the older tape backup, but then even getting that off-site, because having it all on-site, if, I don't want any buildings burning down, but if your backup's there, then unfortunately it doesn't help any. So I'm still seeing a mix, basically.
It's funny because the newer schools are more cloud-based and the older schools still have all their servers in place. I'm a new company, so I'm in the cloud, and it's great because your Rediker is a web-based program, and that's all your student information, and your accounting is web-based, so it's backed up automatically on both counts. So I think your only, what's the word I'm looking for? So your only danger is all the files that you're sharing back and forth through email. So it necessitates a server still, because you can't just put all these miscellaneous files in the cloud.
Right.
But your most important critical data is backed up automatically.
Mm. Great. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I appreciate the detail you guys presented earlier in the finance committee meeting. Appreciate you spending the evening with us here.
That's fine. We like to hope this part of it gives value to the board of the management group, so.
And I think too, I'd like to follow up Dave's comment by acknowledging there's been a front loading of a tremendous amount of energy and time this year. Now that we have some systems in place, if all goes well, it should reduce the amount of time you folks have to do, because when it's new, it's this much time and energy and money, and then as the system gets going, it makes everybody's life easier. So thank you very much for knowing what you know.
Well,
I'll get those letters and get them over to you, and I'll get my management response over to you. Tomorrow.
Well, as long as you're here, why don't we do the motion on the board from the finance committee? I guess the finance committee had met earlier tonight and had decided that they would go ahead and recommend to the board of trustees that the board approve and adopt, or accept the audit. I think it was with two.
With the amendments as agreed.
With adjustments and agreed amendments. And so that being the case, would anyone like to put that motion forward?
I move to accept the audit by Alexander Aronson and Finn with the amendments as agreed.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Keep it good enough to pay the bill?
I'll let the record show that the motion passed.
so this goes to show we did the work for the front.
Good, thank you very much for your work.
Thank you.
The extended discussion during the finance committee was very helpful. So we go on to the approval of the minutes. We have minutes that were circulated for the September 28th meeting.
This is stuff for you to sign.
Right this minute. We sign it right now. Okay, let the record show that we are, Cindy Marie has handed out an acceptance of the Board of Trustees. I'll just read this out loud. So the Board of Trustees of the Gloucester Community Arts Charter School have voted to accept the representations of management and expression of the opinions made by Alexander Aronson and Finney Company as embodied in the financial statements, supplemental schedules, and independent auditors' reports for the year ended June 30th, 2011. We also certify that the representations made by management and the disclosures of the financial statements are accurate and have been correctly and completely disclosed as required by accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Charter School Audit Guide for the period ended June 30th, 2011.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much. Sorry.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. Very nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you too. Tom. Take care.
Thanks so much. Shit, long drive.
Thank you.
Good night. And on to the next item, the approval of the minutes from the Board of Trustees meeting from Wednesday, September 28th. This was the full Board of Trustees meeting. Again, David's been kind enough to circulate these minutes earlier in the week, last week. I assume everyone's had a chance to read them. Do you have a motion to accept the minutes?
So,
Okay, second? Okay, any discussion about the minutes from the Wednesday, September 28th, 2011 Board of Trustees meeting?
On the second page, under item B, MCAS results, line 16, which begins with performing population. Right here, performing population.
It's a little more than halfway down the page. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So in the sentence that follows, it says, Mr. Blackman said that it important to put in perspective. I think the verb is should be inserted to make that a complete sentence.
It is important. Thank you, Art.
That's all.
Thank you.
I would like to have a discussion on that one, because I think we should use the apostrophe and the S, not the is art. After all, what is art?
I don't think contractions are permissible in minute taking.
I think we should have a discussion. And to vote on the amendment.
Any further discussion? All in favor? That show the minutes from September 20th being accepted by the board. State of the school report. Tony, I'll take notes.
The only two items on the State of the School report are preparation for the visit by the charter school office. And in your, we have submitted, there were quite a list of documents that had to be submitted to the charter school office by this past Friday. And those have all been submitted. I want to just note, for the record, special thanks to Jody Seabar for the school and to Nikki Champagne. This was a massive amount of work. The normal time for this particular annual site visit is in February. We'd actually agreed to February 2nd as the date that they had suggested originally at the DSE. And it was moved up just a couple of weeks ago, where they asked to come out on November 1. But all of the same documents have to be prepared and submitted. And so just want to note the enormous effort that went into that. If you look in your board binders, you'll find a schedule for the day. The next part of it is we still have to prepare binders of documents for when they're here. And a number of important focus group meetings. And one of those is with the Board of Trustees. And so I just wanted to do a check-in really as part of the meeting in terms of how many board members would be available. I know some indicated they may be away, but if we could go around the table with those board members that are here, recognize that Irie Adners and Jay Featherstone are not here at the moment, so we'll check in with them. And just for the record, Irie Adner, I don't know if I mentioned that tonight yet or not, but we did receive our approval of Irie Adner as a board member from the Commissioner's office. so he will be here for our next meeting. But in terms of that, they really like to have the meeting shortly after arrival with the Board of Trustees, and not everyone on the visiting team will meet with the full board, but they will also be visiting classes and attending morning meeting. But if we can just check on that quickly, that would be really helpful. Maybe Dave, we can start with you this month. Oh, you can't, actually, sorry. That's right.
It would be a conflict of interest.
It would be, right.
As much as I would like to be there.
I'll be there, and also I remember getting an email from Jay saying he could make it, but he'd be driving from Cambridge. If there's somebody else that could go in his stead, he would prefer that.
Okay.
But I'll be there.
Great. And James, you're away.
I'm planning to kind of be away for the whole week, so.
Philadelphia, yeah.
Okay. I'll have to get away.
Well, I can't come, it's Shay's birthday.
Not to leave.
Oh, okay. I'll be there then.
Great, thank you. And Susan will be there, great. So I'll talk to.
So 8 o'clock is the call?
8 o'clock, okay, yeah, that would be great. And it's generally for about an hour, in terms of time frame. And then we'll be setting up focus groups with students, parents, and also with teachers as part of the visit. And then they visit classes. One of the exciting things for the day, if you want to arrive a little bit early, stay a little bit longer, is that the Wheelock Sign Theater is here performing on that day. So it's quite an exciting mix of poetry, acting. They actually, as a group, they take children's books and then perform them. So it should be great for the students, but they do it with sign as well. So quite neat to watch and a good experience. So we feel actually very prepared for that, and look forward to their visit, and look forward to a positive report back from it. The open house we had this past weekend on Sunday was really uplifting, as they can be. We had 10 of our own families who came in, and another 10 or 15 visiting families. And 5 students have already signed up for the next lottery from that, which was great. But I think just for our teachers, really seeing the excitement and being able to talk to visiting parents as well as their own parents, it was great. The one thing we hadn't sort of counted on, we were trying to be very aware in moving it from Saturday to Sunday of the quite extensive athletic schedule in Gloucester, and we did, in moving it, miss a lot of games on Saturday, but all of the Pee Wee games are actually on Sunday. And so the A, B, and C teams all were playing on Sunday, and so we're going to have to rethink that one and see what we can do there. Because not only did we have students playing in games, but we also had our cheerleader students who were out engaged in that activity, so we kind of missed having them around as well. I think the advertising was very positive. I think that parents are still our best ambassadors, and we know that there were at least a half a dozen more families that had intended to come in, new families, and visit, and weren't able to due to those games. So they'll be coming in. We're going to start the coffees up again to come in and meet with the head of school and the executive director and get a tour. And so despite the open houses happening on a regular basis throughout the year, we're not going to just depend on those. We'll be inviting directly families to come in and meet with us. So, but it was good. And thank you to the board members. I just want to say that it was great to have you there, and and thanks to the teachers. We had the vast majority of the staff here on that day, in at least an hour or two ahead of time, and several teachers were actually in for several hours on Saturday getting ready, and so it was good.
And some people put some time into covering your exit.
Yes.
We were treated, so there was no one here, like, bad mouthing us or anything. As I got here, just as it was done. I thought it was later than it was.
Yes, that's true. Yes, as we were exiting, as dark descended,
So,
Mr. Baird arrived.
oh, all dressed up too.
So Tony, I'm wondering if it would be prudent to schedule a November, December, January, February, March, April, May open house, and then put that on the parent notification section of our new website when that happens.
Absolutely.
Just
We
so
should
that,
do earlier listings in the paper, because I think that would help too on the.
yeah, so that people can plan around sporting events or trips, vacation to, well, I can't make the November and December, but I could come to the January because that's, January and March are long months with no vacation break, and to give people advance notice.
Yeah, it's a great idea, and particularly where, as you remember, it's our pre-enrollment that is the first critical for time frame for next year. And so scheduling those, even though they might continue after that, having something in the communication indicate that there's a time sensitivity to this for them as well as for the school in terms of being in those numbers. So it's a great idea.
Okay, is that it for the state of the school report? That's it, Tony?
Yeah, just, the only last thing it's mentioned, which is that obviously any type of positive presence in the press is important, and there was a letter in the Gloucester Daily Times today from one of our new families, new parents, and so if you didn't get a chance to see it, please check it out. Free.
Tony, can you pass it on our thanks to the staff as well
I will.
for putting in the extra time?
Okay, with that, we'll move on to the next item, which is the DESE open conditions. And again, Tony will speak about the update on DESE open conditions.
Yeah, this is just a standing item we put in to remind us all of these open conditions that are ongoing. Appointment of new member with experience and expertise in public sector management. That we still need to continue to pursue that as we expand the board. The ongoing compliance to open meeting order, that we are continuing to do that to the best of our ability, and report all changes in staff to the CSO within 48 hours, and we are doing that. So.
Let's see, the item number 6 is the review of evaluation tools for the Board of Trustees and Executive Director. I believe we're going to have a motion to approve the evaluation tools for the Board of Trustees and Executive Director. Everyone, I assume, has had a chance to see those documents. They've been modified and sent around and remodified.
They're in your packets as well.
The packets as well as what you gave us.
So I'll take a look at those then. So the page right after the site visit schedule, executive summary for Board of Trustees evaluation. The document that I believe Art put a lot of work into, and David also. Yeah. I think everyone's had a chance to read these. Is there any discussion you want to have ahead of a vote or a motion for this? Or?
Or make a motion, since we've been at this for almost a month, I make a motion that the Board of Trustees approve the 2 evaluation tools for Board of Trustee and the Executive Director.
Second.
Any discussion?
Just was a comment, because I fully expect that we will vote and approve these. And I've said this each time, that we will be having a board retreat on governance and the partnership between the trustees and management, and that may inform our understanding of the work that the board is about, as well as the work that the executive director is about. And that in addition to that, we will be defining, or the board will be defining for the executive director some quite specific goals for this year. And that we should reserve the ability, which we of course would have anyway, or the board should come back to look at these documents again in the future at any time as needed, that they are living documents, and that though you wouldn't want to be amending them all the time, particularly, but that we should reserve the time to come back and take a look at them and amend them as needed. And just as a note, that one of the things which is that I think will come into play there is that there are some sort of standard best practices with regard to certain things, like boards only speak. The board only speaks collectively as one, and that individual board members don't engage in activities on their own directly or speak for the board independently of the board itself. And so having some of that language at some point may be included in this. In addition, most of this focuses on the board as a single entity, with board members then reviewing that work of the board itself. But one of the things that would be worth considering going forward at some point is a evaluation where the individual board members assess their own performance. And one of the things which is often included in that, and it's in here a little less, more vaguely, is that the ability for the board member to indicate whether they feel individually that their full talents and capabilities are being used to their fullest for the board. And that's actually been a really useful line item, I think, in board assessments, because it gives each individual the opportunity to say, well, actually, I've got some skills in this area, or that maybe the board wasn't aware of, and so to have something in there that allows for feedback on an annual basis in terms of that would be good. It also provides a tool for the governance committee, because it's more individually focused, that if there's the need for a conversation with an individual board member regarding performance, you can have that without it needing to be deferred for a review with regard to a term of office. So you're not having to wait for 3 years if at the end of a particular term there's something that the governance committee or the chair of the board feels they need to discuss with an individual board member, they can do that. So those are just reflections, but I want to thank Art and Dave for a massive amount of work on this, and obviously in my somewhat dual role, which hopefully as the board expands will end and I can become ex officio, that as my collective boss, it has been great to work together on this particular tool and to see one that feels very comfortable to me in terms of something that really takes all of the key areas that the executive director has to perform in, and that they're specified very clearly and in the document. And so both as, any evaluation tool is important, really, as a tool that encourages growth and development, and as well as clarity in terms of assessment, and that I feel that this actually does that very well. So my thanks to both of you for leading it, and to all the board for participating. Here they are. All right.
Any other comments?
I had a couple questions.
Sure.
Or things I think we ought to talk about. One is having established who will participate in these reviews. There's that question, there's the frequency of them. And I have a question about whether we want to be quite as, we have a number scale for each particular item. And I wonder if we want to just go to a number score for the heading of that section and simplify it some, so it's not tallying several pages worth of numbers. So there'd be a heading with the, one of them being, for example, let's say leadership and management.
It's the last page.
And have a number score, a scale of 1 to 5 for that, for that heading. And not have the numbers for each of the sub lines, but those lines would remain there as parts of that piece.
I actually would recommend maintaining the additional numbers, as well as if you put this ultimately into a SurveyMonkey-based type of tool, it'll actually perform the, giving you the average for a given grouping, if that's what you want to have ultimately in terms of a report. But if whether it's the board looking at their assessment or executive director looking at his or her assessment, one of the benefits is to see where there are differences in how a different area is interpreted by different board members. I've generally, with the internal professional staff for the past 10 years, I've generally used a full 360 evaluation that has all members of the community giving me feedback, from parents to teachers, all employees. And one of the benefits of it is that being able to sort of sort and look at different areas. So you could actually have a constituency that sees you as being, one constituency might see you as being a very good listener, for example, or good at mediating in a timely fashion difficulties with personnel. And another constituency might not feel that way. So that tells you something even while the average might be a given number. You could also have differences with gender, differences with age groups. Now this is obviously a much smaller thing, but to have a sense that if you have a 10-member board, whether you're looking at a board assessment or an executive director assessment, if there are significant differences in the review in terms of the individual numbers coming from individual board members, that may provide also, even while anonymous, it may provide important information in that you've got some out there who are actually feeling quite differently than the majority. And where's that coming from?
So tell me, why would that be different if you eliminated all the sub-numbers?
Well, you only have the average, so if you have a specific sub-area that's important enough to actually have the line item there, and you group them all together into one number, then you lose all of the, unless there's an area for comments under each one of these, for people to write a longer comment, you actually lose any input on that specific area as a subgroup or subline. And so you just lose some of the, I think you lose some of the feedback and power of what you could get from it.
I'd like to add to that part of the reason, although we didn't go back and forth the discussion about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in this one, is that by being able to rank different items, it highlights strengths and areas of improvement clearly. And because, well, take the board of trustees, for example, a couple of questions are asking about our functions, and do we rate ourselves high or low on that, or 1 or 5, and it may be that out of the 8 of us that we think we're really good at such and such, but there may be a different perception by teachers and parents that differs greatly from what we think of ourselves, and that way we can use that as a learning tool to say, we got to beef this up because we're really not quite as good as we think we are in this area. So we have something to learn.
And maybe we should back up from that, just consider who is going to participate in the review of the executive director, and what group or who would participate in the review of the board. Is it a self-evaluation for the board? Are we throwing it open to the entire school community? There's everything in between on that. And I think we need to be aware of the, how frequently we want to do this, and because I think we might want to make this an efficient process so that it's effective rather than one that's cumbersome and may not be used that often.
Mhm. Well, in frequency, I think we had some discussion about every other month with John Tarvin, because initially we were thinking once every other week, and then, whoa, what are you doing to yourselves? And once every other month will give us as a board and the executive director a chance to review and then make some changes if they're warranted. So that addresses that, and I have no problem discussing with Tony. I don't know anything about SurveyMonkey, but there has to be a way to have those people who are going to be submitting it do it in a way that's easy and also anonymous, and that the results go into a central bank and then they're collated. I mean, I'm happy to, I'm volunteering if it becomes necessary to get all of them and do the tabulation and writing of comments, because I have time to do that. But if there's a shorter and more efficient way via an established program, and that's something Tony and I and Jody board members can figure out.
So, just taking the executive director for a minute,
Mm-hmm.
The board's going to participate in that. Are we opening that to other evaluators as well? Or is that, are we the evaluators in this case? I just, just throwing this question out because I think we need to
At the
decide.
inception, it was probably, yes, it's a great question, because as Tony said, the 360 evaluation has got a lot of value to it as well. It's certainly a larger logistical undertaking.
Well, I would say, just as a caveat to that, I'd say that that's always been my choice as a head of school. It's never been required by a board. In fact, I'm not aware of any board that's ever required it, but I'm coming out of the independent school world primarily, so I have no idea in terms of public or charter schools. Same with frequency. I mean, I've always had an annual review, but I've never been reviewed multiple times in 1 year. In terms of the formal assessment, it's very time consuming, and I don't see that as being functioning particularly well, but and certainly not for a board either. I think that for the board to be assessing itself on a quarterly basis would be not sure, you'd be finishing one assessment and preparing for another.
Yeah, that's what I guess I would be in favor in terms of the review of the executive director of making that a board review right now, and that the board would be made aware of input from other constituencies if that's necessary. But for as a starting point for us, anyway, I think that would be what I'd be in favor of. And I do think we might want to talk about doing it less frequently. I think.
And every other month?
Every other month, I think is really cumbersome.
Okay, well, we have November is next week.
Labor intensive.
November is next week, so we have 7 months, 7 months, 140 school days left.
But who's counting?
I am.
The one thing as a caveat I'd add to that too is that I think that it's important to make a distinction between a formal assessment or evaluation as a tool for growth and a review of goals.
Mm-hmm.
I think that for the executive director, it actually may be more helpful on whether through the governance committee or the full board, that part of what you'd want to be doing at minimum on a quarterly basis would be asking for a report on the goals, whether it's included in the state of the school report or specifically as an item in the agenda put on meetings quarterly by the board to ask for feedback from the executive director on where the executive director feels the goals are and their achievement, and for feedback to be provided directly to the executive director in public session on their view of where those goals are. Because you wouldn't want to be going on through the year feeling like the goals were not getting achieved, And then neither, the board's not managing to communicate that to the executive director and/or having any discussion about it. So just to make a distinction there, I think that one, they're different things.
All right, I have an idea, and that is, I like your idea of the board taking care of their evaluation, but also the executive director, and bring that information to our November 11th John Tarvin experience to break it down, to see how it went logistically, frequency-wise, time per evaluation document, and have that as part of our discussion on the 11th, and then make a decision as a board. Then, do we want to keep it this way? Do we want to open it to parents and staff? What is the next step based on the results of the first round of the board evaluating the executive director and the board evaluating itself?
I think in the spirit of what Tony said earlier, given that there is this retreat coming up, the whole idea of evaluating the evaluation process is a very good one, and that's, that we also like the idea of having some data points, some empirical data to work with at that time to make that evaluation. I think that's a terrific idea. I think
That way it becomes a living document, not just a theoretical discussion.
I like it. Susan, what do you think?
I'm thinking, I think what Art said, you should wait and do it more fully. I don't really understand the frequency and all that stuff. I don't really have an opinion on that right now. Frequency and who's involved in it.
So I just thought of another benefit to getting it distributed to the Board of Trustees, both documents, which I think everybody has in their computer right now, to ask people to keep track of how much time it takes them to do each evaluation and bring, because we're meeting a week from next Friday, to see how much time it takes, and that can be part of our discussion. Because I'm interested in efficiency too. And at the same time, if we as a school, governing board of the school, need a shift in direction or need to learn from this experience, that's an opportunity for us to. Yeah, but you can't say that. You just said that the evaluation showed something completely different. Why did that contradiction emerge? And then have some discussion around it. So we have to make a motion about that?
I think, my understanding is that we can accept these tools as a board. And then with the understanding, I'm not even sure if this has to be part of the motion or not, but once we come through the retreat, we may want to put another motion out that says we decided that we want to modify the process by which we evaluate the board and the executive director. I don't think we have to do anything about that right now because we don't know what's going to happen. So, but we may, I think we can, one of the items on the agenda today is to approve the evaluation tools that we have in front of us right now. If we choose to amend them later on, then so be it.
Okay.
So
Just one other suggestion would be if we narrowed it down to John Harvey being the facilitator for the retreat.
I think for the first meeting that John Tarvin, who's available for the 11th, his intention actually is to really only do a initial piece of it, which is to review with the board and make sure that the board understands what the functioning of a board in a public charter school is supposed to be. What is that particular responsibility and duty? I think where he's not prepared to work with the board and doesn't have the background is I had spoken earlier about the importance of a case study approach, which allows the board to, in smaller groups and then as a group together, to take a look at real life situations that have come out, being generated from various executive directors and board chairs that help to really explore that partnership and leadership, and look at situations of, is this a board issue or is this a management issue? And how would you deal with it if it arose? Kind of those kind of discussions. I think there are a couple of other people who would come in and do that at another time, but I think that we may not be able to do that piece of it on the 11th, which given the shortness of the day, because we're probably not going to get a full day because of the Veterans Day celebration and the first performance of the Gloucester Community Children's Choir, that we'll be having a slightly later start than we might have anticipated. So.
Well, I just brought that up because I wonder if it would be helpful to send these to John, so he knows what the instrument is, and maybe he has some comments for us about it.
I think that's great. Great idea.
Why don't I take the responsibility to do that, Tony?
That's great.
Okay.
Sure.
We will be doing. I would. The other very minor change that I would suggest is that NA for not applicable or NK for no knowledge is better actually than NO,
Which is not observed.
which is not observed, just because people have indicated in surveys, reviews that having no. The word "no" appear going down the sidebar of the survey.
Even though there's a
can
slash?
create a slight, just a slight negative feel to a survey. So an A or NK would be more than one.
I will attempt to change that. It's a formatting nightmare, this document.
Yes, it is. All right, so I don't think we've actually had an official motion to accept. I think we started our discussion ahead of the motion to accept the evaluation tools.
Right.
Okay.
Well, we had the motion.
Oh, we did have a motion.
no,
Now discussion. Now we're in the discussion. Okay, I'm sorry. My mistake. Any more discussion? And we've had the motion, we've had the second, we've had the discussion. All in favor of accepting these evaluation tools? Raise your hand. Aye. It would show that that motion carried. And, okay, so, on the committee updates, which is item number 7, we've already done the audit review. The motion to approve the audit was passed. And on the 501c3, as I mentioned earlier, the finance committee meeting, Dave and I had spent some time over the course of the summer taking care of some of the legal paperwork that's involved. There's a little contextual work that has to be done for a few forms to file the 501c3 papers, which should be approved by year end. I'm taking care of that tomorrow. If we are fortunate enough to have any contributions, and we do not have we're not confident that it will be approved because it does take 6 to 8 weeks, we do have the opportunity to get the physical sponsorship services from other groups like the Essex County Community Foundation. So we would be able to accept. Normally, one can accept a contribution and have it be tax deductible from a foundation, so long as that all the documents and paperwork are approved by year end. So we don't need to be approved right this second. If someone from the state were to tell us that we were going to be approved and we had a great certainty and faith in that representation, then we could accept that. But we do have a backup plan just in case. So all that should be taken care of, and we'll have more on that at the next finance committee meeting.
Did you ever get in contact with Deb Carlson?
I did. Yeah.
Is that going on?
I've put a call in, and that's regarding approaching the foundation, and I did make 2 calls, and I haven't heard back yet.
Mm-hmm.
So, and actually, I was asked not to talk to Dave Carl, but the person who actually runs the foundation. So that's what I've done.
Right.
And I've written and called, so I'm just waiting to hear back. But
Well,
thank you.
I'd be interested to hear about what they have to say.
Yeah, I would too, yeah. So, but we'll have a follow-up on that as well. Susan, thank you. So, that's the 501c3. On to item number 8, discussion of possible agenda items for the next meeting, which will be not far from now. I will have to say that we've had about 5 board of trustee meetings in the last month and 3 quarters, and I am very appreciative of everyone. We have a lot of work to go through. And I appreciate everyone's work. Who's made it to these meetings and done quite a lot of work in between the meetings.
November 2nd, Wednesday is,
Okay.
Next week.
Oh, really?
yes, that's right,
I will.
next Wednesday.
Okay. I may be back, I'm not sure from that, so. But any just possible agenda items for that meeting?
Yeah, I'd like to make sure that Jody Ziegler gets
Okay.
on the Board of Trustees mailing list and gets an invitation to our Board of Trustees meetings. Whether she can make them all or not is another question, but I want to make sure she's included.
I think there's also an idea of having a faculty member or someone else come on board. Do you have any ideas for that? Anyone who's
Is that in place, Tony? Does the staff know about that?
Staff know about.
Presentation to the board.
Yeah, the next group coming is remember we talked about this actually at the last meeting, was the special education. The entire team, how they're going to come.
Les seemed to have a question about that last time I heard.
Say it again.
Les seemed to have a question about that. I think it was at the program committee a few weeks ago. He said something about wanting to postpone that, so I didn't think.
I thought that was for this meeting, but not for.
Oh, maybe it was. I don't know something.
So are they scheduled for the 2nd?
They should be coming on the 2nd, yeah.
Should there be a report in on facilities?
Facilities committee has not really been formed yet. I've talked to some people about joining, and we haven't had a meeting yet, so there's really no real committee yet. There's definitely a series of items before it, and so we'll probably try to make that happen within the next week.
So this meeting is our next meeting is going to be Wednesday, November 2nd.
Yes.
And you're actually away that
Yeah,
day. So are we, did we talk about this last time, are we definitely having this meeting next week, or do we want to wait until the following week? I was just thinking that, what are we going to, if we're going to have this meeting, we're going to be visited on November 1 by the CSO. We want to have enough time for them to give us feedback, or at least some preliminary feedback. Or we could very easily find ourselves scheduling yet another board meeting because we want to be able to have a discussion about what has come up from the site visit. So I'm just wondering, should we postpone by at least a week?
That puts it right before the retreat, so back-to-back meetings.
And we have a program committee meeting on Thursday the 10th.
That was the issue there, yeah.
The following week at the end of the week
Tony,
is...
I think having another meeting next week is not, but all of us are looking forward to.
Yeah.
We've had a string of them for the last 8 weeks. Just wondering if is there a pressing need to have that meeting next week?
I mean, we could, actually, the next, although it doesn't put us into December, but you could go to the end of the month for a full board meeting.
And then what about December? Go to the 7th?
Yeah.
Having 2 in a row.
Well, there's the Board of Education meeting is on December 20th. So my suggestion actually would be that we would be meeting, if we meet at the end of November, that we then move the December meeting to the week of the 12th through the 16th, which would give you 3 weeks. if it's at the end of that month, that would give you the time to discuss the upcoming BDSC meeting. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but that would work better. In terms of actual work that's coming up and things we need to do, that would be, you know, if we're having we've got a retreat on the 11th, you know, we're having a lot of meetings.
Yeah.
Unless there's something really pressing that we're needing to meet as a full board on, I would suggest that we move it to the end of November.
So that would either be the 23rd, which is the night before Thanksgiving, or the 30th, if we're sticking with Wednesday?
What about the 16th?
Yeah, 16th would be an option.
Are people traveling for Thanksgiving?
I don't think the night before Thanksgiving is a good idea.
Yeah.
So, I don't think that's very effective.
Here's the 16th.
We're cooking.
Well, depending on what we're doing with it, what about doing the 21st to the 22nd? And having included in that, prior to the board meeting or just after the board meeting, depending on when we host it, have some sort of celebration of the staff. We've talked about doing something like that. We haven't done anything really. I mean, we kind of hit the ground running and the school up and going, and you know, maybe there's some sort of host a meeting on one of those days, and then have that go into some sort of celebration and thank you of staff and their significant others, and board members and their significant others who allow us all to be away for significant periods of time.
So, are you thinking about that kind of an event only for a night during the week? Or, let's say Friday the 18th?
Yeah, Friday the 18th would be, then people aren't coming in afterwards, or I don't know.
So we're talking about two different things now. One is a board meeting for November and another one in December, and then an event to celebrate the hard work of everybody, all staff and board and central source people.
Yeah, there you go.
Do that meeting.
All right, in the essence of time, can we make a decision about? I think it's clear that a couple of us may not want to have a board of trustees meeting next Wednesday.
I would be very supportive of that.
Okay. So then if we move that to Wednesday the 16th, then the December meeting would be either the 7th or the 14th. That would give us almost a month to get next Tuesday's visit results. Any other information that we have to gather for the
Board of Education.
Board of Education meeting.
Yeah, it's a good mix actually. The 16th still leaves us plenty of time for that, and then have the meeting in December on the 14th. Is that what you're thinking?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's time, should anything arise in that meeting with regard to preparations for the 20th, we've got plenty of time to do that, you know.
And then-
May even be wanting to invite Colin Zick and to come to that meeting, so.
And the other decision is about a staff Board of Trustees celebratory event on the 18th of November, which is 3 weeks. Is that the day that we're thinking about?
Well, it could be any of those days that's good for people. Depends on what kind of event it is. If it's at the school, then, you know, it's one type of event, sort of have a potluck get-together. If it's going to be a potluck with, And people want to be able to have wine or anything like that there. You can't do that on a public school ground. So we could find a different venue for that, and I'm happy to explore that.
So why don't we decide the date, and then we can work on the details of where afterwards.
Well, 18th is,
Friday the 18th.
18th is fine.
Yeah, I think that could be.
All right, so the decision is the November Board of Trustees meeting will be the 16th.
Yep.
Which is a Wednesday. The Board of Trustees meeting in December will be the 14th, which is a Wednesday.
At what time? 6:30?
5 to midnight or something? No, I'm joking.
I just never can know what time these things start, so
That's
6
right.
or what time?
Usually, in case someone wants to put another meeting ahead of that, because sometimes something will have to be voted on, I'd like to leave an hour beforehand. But typically, any of those meetings can happen at the 5:30 level, so 6 is generally a safe time. If it's not 6:30 then, but you're within, 30 minutes if you said 6. And we don't have to split that hair just right this second. We can always, figure out whether it's going to be 6 or 6:30, before we post them.
So our governance was planned to be right before the board on the 2nd. Can you just let Jay know that?
Yes.
If you want,
Yep.
but,
I can do
you want to do that as well. And that would be the same for December as well.
Is there, would it be worth having a discussion with him about that? Not let the governance committee make the decision about when they're next going to be. And I would, yeah, that'd probably work. Even if it's November, even if it is November 16th, that would be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not with that.
Okay, we can wrap it up. Why don't we, as usual, Tony and I will get together and talk about our necessary agenda items, and we'll finalize some times, and we'll be in touch with everybody to find out what works best. Thank you all for your patience tonight. Thank you all for your evening. So, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
A second. I'll second it. This discussion?
So, whatever discuss.
That's good.